Radhe Radhe everyone. Welcome to our daily wisdom from Bhagavad-Gita session. Nitinji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Amritavani-ji. Thank you, Harish-ji and Smita-ji for a beautiful session. Followed a bit of that conversation. Great, interesting discussion going on. Radhe Radhe, welcome. Good morning, good evening. I see mother-daughter duo joining together today, so that's nice. Wonderful. Good to see you both together. Today we are going to discuss a very important topic. We are going to discuss about the caste system, as it is perceived in Western circles, that Hinduism, it's vilified for caste system. So we'll look at it in perspective. What does it truly mean, and what is Bhagavad-Gita telling us about this concept? So we'll get deeper into this aspect. So let's get started with our opening prayers, and then we'll get deeper into the topic of our discussion today as well. I'm glad I was able to make it in time today. I was rushing from office. I had to go to office, and I wasn't sure I'll, make it in time. Just in time, I was able to make it, which is good. Let me share my screen. We'll get started. Give me a sec. Okay, everything is good. Audio,
Yes,
video.
yes. All good.
Thank you. All right, we'll do our opening prayers then. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. All right, Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening again, everyone. So we are on chapter 4, verse 13. Finally, we have come to this verse. We took a bit of a break in between where we are toggling between different shlokas. We did the Karam Yoga for one full week, more than a week, in fact. And then we have Mother's Day. Yesterday, we had a very engaging and a fascinating conversation on Mother, Divine Mother, that aspect. And today we will get into this division of society based on caste. What is the underlying meaning of this particular shloka and this concept? So let me recite it, and then you're welcome to follow. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagashah tasya kartaramapi mam vidya kartaramavyayam. All right, Doniji, let's have some volunteers.
Akshi-ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagashah tasya kartaramapi mam vidya kartaramavyayam. Radhe
Very
Radhe.
nice, Meenakshi-ji. Radhe Radhe.
Shyam-ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you so much, Radhe Radhe. Chaturvarnyam maya shrashtam guna karma vibhagasha tasya kartarmapi mam vidya kartarmavyayam. Radhe Radhe.
Very nice, Sayam-ji. Radhe Radhe. There was just a little break today, but overall it went fine. Wonderful. Okay, let's take some more. I see one hand.
Sorry?
No, please go ahead.
Urvi-ji, go ahead. Huh?
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारमव्ययम्.
Very nice,
Thank
Suruchi.
you.
Wonderful. All right, we can take a few more.
Ashutoshi, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Okay, Ashutosh.
चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारमव्ययम्.
Wonderful. Very nice, Ashutosh. Okay.
Samji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Then
राधे
Sanji.
राधे चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारमव्ययम्.
Wonderful, Samji. Very nice.
Samji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Chaturvaranyam maya srishtam dhankaram vibhagisha tasya kartaram imam vidya ekartam avyayam. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Samji. Very nice.
Ragi ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Ragiji.
राधे राधे चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्ये कर्तारमव्ययम्.
Very nice, Swati. Radhe Radhe. Let's take the last 2 or 3 hands.
Shafali ji, Sandhya ji, please go ahead.
Go to recite after between you two today.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Both of us actually. हाँ, both of us दोनों मिल. हाँ चलिए.
You can.
चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्यद कर्तारमव्ययम्.
Very nice, Shefali. You get the best debut award today for the first time. Wonderful. Good job.
चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारमव्ययम्.
Wonderful, Sandhya. Very nice. All right. Do we have any more?
Yes. 3 more hands.
Okay, last 3 then. We are down.
Yeah,
to last
Yes.
3.
Rupa ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe everyone. चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारम् अपि मां विद्या कर्तारम् अव्ययम्.
Very nice, Rupa ji. Radhe Radhe. Okay, last 2.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Swati ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
चातुर्वर्ण्य मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्या कर्तारम् अव्ययम्.
Yeah, tasya kartaram mam vidya kartaram avyayam. All right, last one, Uday ji. Thank you very much, Swati ji.
Uday ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारम् अपि मां विद्य कर्तारम् अव्ययम्. राधे राधे.
Radhe Radhe. Very nice, Uday ji. So let's get started on this shloka. Chaturvarnyam. That means the 4 categories of occupations. Maya means by me. Srishtam were created. Guna means of quality. Karma and activities. Vibhagashah according to divisions. Tasya of that. Kartaram the creator. Api although. Mam me. Vidhi no. Akartaram non-doer. Avyayam unchangeable. So this is a very important shloka, like all the other shlokas in Bhagavad-Gita. This tackles the often misunderstood concept around the 4 divisions of society, which has been over time categorized basically on the different categories of the caste system, so to say. If you speak to in Western circles, it is often spoken to, in not so much in good light, that Hinduism promotes casteism, right? Those divisions, and because of that, we know, what happens. People who are relegated to the downtrodden level, they are like become untouchables. We have seen historically what happens, right? And then in order to uplift them, people come up with different ways of bringing them into the mainstream, and reservation system started like that until it became more of a political divisive tool, and basically a basis for vote bank. And this thing is so deeply ingrained in our system, in our DNA, that it just becomes part of our DNA. Okay, which caste? And then you look upon that person or look down upon that person. That is how deeply ingrained this caste system is in our system. So we'll look at it, the genesis of it, and try to see it in perspective, more through objectivity rather than through the typical subjectivity that we bring to this topic, about caste and caste system, and see what Lord Krishna is telling about it. So what God is saying in this one is, Lord Krishna is saying that the 4 categories of occupations were created by me according to people's qualities and activities. Although I am the creator of this system, know me to be the non-doer and eternal. Okay. Now let's look at it, this concept now. So what is Bhagavad-Gita? This is what we are going to discuss today, telling us about this caste system, and is my caste determined by the family that I am born in? That is what the surname we end up acquiring, and it has typically got some kind of a lineage grounded in the caste system that was institutionalized over time. Okay. All right. Now the Vedas, they classify people into 4 categories of occupations. Okay. The key thing here is not according to their birth, but according to their natures. First thing, it tackles it head on. Not according to their birth, but according to their natures. Now, let's look at it. These pillars, as you can see, this thing is standing on 4 pillars, or 4 pillars are needed. If you have studied mechanical or trusses, you would know there's a significance of each pillar. It's not that you can simply take off one pillar and this whole system will continue to sustain itself. So these 4 pillars are there, which are needed for the sustenance of this society. So what is God telling about this? He's saying that these 4 pillars are Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Now, the important thing to understand here is, understand it very clearly. Such varieties of occupations, they exist in every society. This division, it exists in every society, regardless of which religion you follow, or which regardless of whichever nationality you are part of, or regardless of which planet you are on, or regardless of which Brahmand you are on. If you are in material nature, these 4 categories will always exist. There is a reason for that. We'll get into that. Now, this classification was neither meant to be according to birth, nor was it unchangeable. Once you are stuck, you are stuck. Not like that, God is saying. And this Varnashram Dharam that we're talking about, it is based on people's qualities and activities. Not just you acquired some surname because of some reason, something in the past, and now you are stuck with it for the rest of your life and pretty much it. No. It is actually changeable, and it is driven by your qualities and activities, nothing else. So it is not by birth, it is by karma, what you do, the kind of occupation you are in, the kind of day-to-day things that you do. that determines which one of these four categories you fall into. Okay. So this is a very, very important concept to understand. So that now, what does it translate to in practical life? Can we change our surnames? Of course not, right? That is what we are stuck with. But if we change our profession, if we start doing one activity as opposed to another, technically, yes, you could. Now you have changed it because your profession has changed. The qualities that you are exhibiting because of your free will, your choices, your sanskars, occupation could be a factor of a lot of things. That means you are entitled to change your surname as well. Now you're doing a job of a different category, and that's essentially what Lord is saying. And all these four activities are needed for the sustenance of this creation as well. They are equally important. We'll see how. Now the fourth pillar, I think that's a typo. The first one is the Brahmins. What our scriptures tell us, they are the ones who have a preponderance of the mode of goodness. We have spoken about that this Mike world is made up of three gunas: the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. And see, the interesting thing about the Mike world is anything that you take can have infinite combinations, even though the primary gunas are three, but their variations could be infinite. Like, for example, in science, we see the primary colors, right? We have heard RBG, red, blue, green. But are we saying there are only three colors? There are so many shades that are possible just by mixing and matching those proportions of those three primary colors. Similarly, when it comes to music, we have seven sur, sa re ga ma pa tha ni sa, right? Do re mi fa sol la ti do, do ti la so fa mi re do. But are we saying there is a limited number of tunes that are possible from it? No, unlimited. Similarly, we have three gunas, and the manifestations of those three gunas, the proportions that you can see are infinite. However, having said that, the Brahmins, right, or the Pandits, you call them, they have a preponderance on the mode of goodness, and they have a predisposition towards teaching and worship. Some people have a natural, like you call them, prakriti swabhav, that they have. So they are in the mode of goodness. They are called Brahmins. So if you do that, then yes, you are a Brahmin. Second one is Shaktriya. Now, Shaktriya are the ones who have a preponderance, proclivity, tendency, or predisposition. They are operating in the mixed mode of passion and a smaller amount of the mode of goodness as well. And they are more inclined towards administration and management. So if you're doing that, then you're in this category. The third one is Vaishyas, those who have possessed the mode of passion mixed with some mode of ignorance. If you look at it, these gunas, the interplay of gunas has started happening. It doesn't mean that if you are a Brahmin, you don't have mode of ignorance at all, but it is talking about the dominant guna or the general tendency that a person would have. And accordingly, they form the business and agricultural class. That is what the Vaishyas are. And the fourth one are the Shudras, who are predominated by the mode of ignorance. They typically form the working class. Now, all of these classes have a role, designated role in society. You cannot say we will have all the teachers who are doing teaching or worship, or for that matter, everybody who's administering or fighting wars, or for that matter, everybody who's carrying the business, or for that matter, all who are doing the worker class job. You need a mix of that. So it's not that God has created, it's something which has to be there, because end of the day, we all have an interplay of gunas within us as well. And whichever guna we end up fueling more will land up in, that will become the modus or the de facto or the go-to guna for us in our coming lives as well. That builds our sanskar. And God is saying, it's simply stating, whichever guna you keep on picking up through your free will would determine which one of these categories would you fall into. Or he is going to arrange so that you are born into that kind of a family as well. right? So if you, let's say you spend a lot of time in devotion, or your mind operates really well when it comes to having a lot of patriotism, right? People have a lot of patriotism. They want to fight a war for their country. And they have those kind of tendencies as well. If that is a deep-rooted desire you have, maybe you're born in a Kshatriya family. But then that doesn't have to do with the surname. Okay, that is a very important thing too, right? The first Paramveer Chakra, you know who won that? Somnath Sharma. So he was a Brahmin. But was he a Brahmin? Yes, going by societal norms, he was a Brahmin. But by his karam, he was actually a Kshatriya, because he laid down his life to fight war for his country. Ravidas, right? Swamiji had told his story. By profession, from society standpoint, he was a Shudra, because he was doing the business of, the hide or charam vepar. He used to do that. Leather, that is what his family used to do. That is what he was born in. But actually, through his gunas, they were that of a Brahmin, because he would impart knowledge to people. So it has nothing to do with the stereotyping that society imposes on us. It has to do with the gunas that you carry forward, or the karam that you end up doing. Technically, in Kali Yuga, nobody is a Brahmin. Okay, we are either Vaishya or Shudra. Nobody is a Brahmin. Like if you ask me personally, I'm born in a Brahmin or a Pandit family. But if you ask me, am I truly doing that? No, I'm doing a job and getting pay for it. That's what I've been doing. It's only a little bit of, I'm aligning to whatever society has imposed on my surname. By now, Swamiji has enabled this seva, so a little bit of that is getting aligned. But actually, if you think about it, we all do job and we get paid for it, which falls into Vaishya category, because you are imparting services and getting paid for that. Somebody who imparts knowledge, and that is their primary job function. Like Guru, you used to have Raj Gurus, right? Previously, every Raja would have a Raj Guru. We will go to him and take consultation from him, and that used to be his primary job function. And he would train the Rajkumars and Gurukul, run the Gurukul. That would fall into a proper Brahman category. And then Kshatriyas are the ones who protect the subjects of the kingdom. Like Arjun was a Kshatriya. Lord Krishna is beckoning him to say that, hey, you are a Kshatriya. Go in accordance with your nature, as opposed to trying to do something that is not according to your nature. Because if you put these people even in jail, let's say, for that matter, right? If somebody has a business temperament, he would figure out some way of running a business even in a jail. Okay? If somebody has a tendency to work, right? Some people just want to do work, nishkam seva or whatever. I mean, even if they are doing sakam seva, they will do work. They just want to be somewhere and do work, right? You need people. And some people, and if Arjun, people like that, they will form a gang there, even in a jail, and have some kind of gang fights going on there. You never know that, because their preponderance is towards that administration, management, and if you have some kind of a Brahman, he'll form a group of 4 and 5 and start imparting gyan, right? And there are people who will, wherever they go, they start speaking, because that comes naturally to them. So our gunas drive us in that sense. But Krishna is saying you are not stuck with that. You have an ability to change it, and it is determined with your karma, not with your birth. Problem happens when you get stereotyped. That label is something you keep carrying from one tradition to one generation to another, and you are basically stuck with it, right? And then all those divisive things happen, because even though they are 4 pillars, or parallel pillars, not somebody's higher or other is lower or something like that, right? People say Brahmins came from the head, Shudra came from the feet, so that doesn't make Shudra any lower. If you look at Ganges, Ganga river, it comes from the feet. We touch feet of elders. So it's all our creation, where they say they are like 4 pillars which are needed for any society. Now, let's say we are in America or England or any other society. Can we say that we can do away with these divisions in any other society? No. It's just formally introduced to us. However, no matter whichever country, whichever nationality, whichever Brahmand for that matter you would go, these 4 divisions will always exist, because it's an interplay of gunas and what you have acquired as a matter of your free will choice. So these four divisions will always remain. That is essentially what Krishna is saying. He's not saying one is superior, other is not, one needs a reservation or one needs to run the society or anything of that sort. When human vested interests take over and they start perpetuating some of these classifications, then it becomes a problem. Now, Buddha avatar happened when Brahmanvad took undue advantage of this privilege that they had. They became the go-to or the middlemen between God, people and God. And Bali Pratha, sacrificial Pratha, all that stuff. So the role that Jews played prior to the World War, where they started controlling the businesses, and because of which there was a prevailing hate sentiment, which, we know what Hitler did with that. Something similar happened during, before Buddha's Brahmanvad was like they had started taking control and started misinterpreting Vedas and started, misusing the Bali Pratha and the animal sacrifice and everything become very prevalent. And then God has its ways to reset that. He sent Buddha and said, okay, forget about Vedas. Let's wipe the slate clean and start from scratch. However, Vedas are Vedas. If people have misused it, doesn't mean that Vedas are any less, right? Cricket is cricket. If somebody does match fixing, doesn't mean cricket become any less. It's just that. So then he sent Shankaracharya. He said, okay, Vedas, let's re-establish Vedas. And so he came and re-established Vedas. Everything was Ved Sammat, what he introduced, and he built on where Buddha had left. So it's very strategically planned from that sense. The key thing here is that these categorizations are something which should be born out of what we are doing from our karmas. It should not be born out of the label that we are born with. And technically in Kali Yuga, all of us are Vaishyan Shudras. Okay, doesn't mean that you become any less. Only it means is that you are not truly able to align to the principle of being a Brahmin, because it's very difficult to do that. Very few people would be able to do that for a living, right? Begging on alms, living on alms, imparting knowledge for free, and doing and spending your entire life about imparting knowledge or doing worship. If you do that, then yes, you are aligning to that. Otherwise, you are not. So that is how it goes. I see one hand raised. Yes, any question before I move further? Because now we are going to look at the caste of Lord Krishna himself. What is this caste? Okay.
Ramyaji, please go ahead.
And it comes into play as well. Yes, Shivamaji.
Radhe Radhe Nitinji, I had a lot of questions, but I narrowed them down into two questions. My first question is in the previous slide, the one before this.
You want me to go to that slide?
Yes, if possible.
It is possible, very much possible.
Yes, yeah. Here you said that classification it could be changed, like the caste could be changed. And then in previous chapter in Bhagavad-Gita, when we were doing, there was one shloka which said that a person he should go by his dharma, his duty, rather than taking on some other's duty. So here, this is my biggest confusion every time I read Gita. Like, what is the difference between this duty and this occupation? Because duty, they said you should follow your own duty, and here occupation, Krishna is telling we can change the occupation. So how to distinguish between duty and occupation? This is one question. I'll tell my second question also.
Sure. Let me digest the first one and try to answer that first. So that's a good one, actually. So when we talk about changing the occupation, changing the duty. So from an occupation standpoint, see, what Krishna is saying is that, see, what is the word that is being used? Classification is neither meant to according to birth, nor was it unchangeable. So for example, we spoke about this concept of free will, right? So your natural guna might be of tamas or laziness, right? Your mind tells you always take it easy. What's the hurry? That means you are primarily in the mode of ignorance. However, with your free will, you can override it, right? You can override it and say, no, I have to propel myself to action. So you are actually exercising your free will to transcend your guna, or to bring in more mix of passion and reducing the ignorance in the meantime. And your profession will automatically get aligned to that. That is how I see that, because you can work on your gunas and profession will be an outcome of it. Because if you're action oriented, obviously a profession will find you where you will fit in more nicely. And that is where I think God has given you free will. Otherwise, it will be a vicious cycle where you are stuck. And then whichever profession you are in, so whichever guna, now in case of Arjun, right, what Lord Krishna is saying, now it doesn't say that you have to become first Brahman and then you become Gunatit. No, he's not saying that. If you do your job to perfection in whatever occupation you are in, you can and do it as a service to God, you are already becoming Gunatit. You don't have to go through, it's not a ladder like Shudra Vaishya first, move from tamas to this and then that. Whichever profession you are in, if you are able to attach your mind to God as a selfless service, then you can transcend your gunas. That means you are able to change it, and it's a natural consequence of it, right? If you have more mode of ignorance, then you will be attached to inaction, laziness, procrastination. And if you are exerting your free will, that means you are propelling yourself to action. And then the professions will find you, right? The more you start aligning to those principles. This I see that, but I see that apparent contradiction in both part of it. So I'll also check with Swamiji if we can add some more color to this explanation, or any participants who may want to. But yeah, it's a very, very valid question. The other aspect of it is there is a reason why you are born at a certain place, right? That means it's not happening accidentally. Now, we will not know what our duty at that point is. Now, if I'm born in a family, let's say an army man, and I have an army upbringing, and everybody wants, and including yourself, want to become a soldier in life. And when the war time comes, you take a leave and go on a vacation, right? That means you ran away from your duty. So in that case, Krishna is saying, honor your duty where you are, what you are actually, the situation that you are placed in. Do not run away from that. That is not a time where you say, now I'm going to change my guna. Okay, now I'll start teaching. That's what Krishna is saying. Don't go for that. You need to know why, where you are, which station of life you are in, what is your duty at a given point in time, right? As a soldier, if it's battle time, then I better go to the frontier and defend my country. So don't run away from that at that point. That's essentially what he's saying. But at the same time, if there's an opportunity for you where you can transcend your guna, especially the ones which are not leading us to action or to noble virtues, then you certainly have that ability. So Lord Krishna is saying, keep working on them, because you don't have to fall prey to your gunas always. Duryodhan said that I know what dharam and adharam is, but it's my gunas which is driving me and compelling me to make bad choices. But Lord Krishna is saying, no, they will compel you, but you can override that. That's essentially what he's saying. You have an ability to override your lower nature. So wherever your gunas help you conquer your lower nature, go for it. And wherever your gunas, you cannot use your gunas as an excuse to run away from your higher duty or higher nature. So that's how at least I would interpret it. Hope it helps.
Yes, Nitinji. To some extent, it answered my second question, but not fully. Can I say my second question also?
Sure, as long as it's not going to be a third one, that's fine.
Okay. The next one is in the next slide, where you have put the modes, right? The first one is goodness, second one is goodness plus passion, like that. So Krishna ourselves, he tells us that we should not operate from the mode of ignorance, and at least from the mode of goodness. But if everybody were to follow that advice, then there would be no Shudra class or Vaishya class at all. Then that would again bring like it would not cause a balance in society. So like now, how can we say that, like at that time we can't bring up a conclusion that ignorance is leading to balance in society? That is also not correct. So how to see it in proper perspective?
Agreed. That's a very valid point, a good point, in fact. And the way I understood it is that Krishna is telling us this, and he's simply telling us these four classes will always remain. So even after having this knowledge, right? Some people, see, we all have access to this knowledge. How many of us actually get to this knowledge, or how many actually start making an effort? So he understands that. In further shlokas, he says that very few will strive for it. And he has seen us since time eternity. Okay, we are in 7th Manvantar right now, and he has seen this whole creation. He's been seeing that to know for a fact these four divisions will always remain. Okay, no matter what. Not everybody would propel themselves out of that ignorance and stuff, and there would be classes of people which will keep falling into that. Now, it's a very interesting question, philosophical question. If everybody would shake themselves out of mode of ignorance towards passion and towards goodness and gunatit, what will happen, right, to this creation? But apparently this creation continues in every Brahman, material creation, because very few people are actually inspired on this path. And people who get inspired, very few actually strive for it. And people who actually strive for it, very few actually reach. So it's a law of diminishing returns all along the way. And people fall even after getting to the state of Mahabhavs as well. So maybe Krishna and God has seen long enough and hard enough to know that these four divisions are always there. And some people have a choice. They just want to do what they're doing and they're happy doing that. Or maybe somebody can add more color to that. Yes, Jyotiji, you had some answer for that.
Jyotiji, sorry, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Radhe Radhe, I know that you're in the middle of your presentation, so I won't take long with this. But there is the story of the Vaishya and the Pandit, and the Pandit takes shelter in the rain, and then he keeps thinking about why is she a Vaishya? Why is she doing all that? While the Vaishya in the station of life that she's in, she is constantly thinking about how to make better choices and lead herself out of the life that she is in. And Bhagwanji blesses her and does not reward the Pandit. And this goes back to the fact that by our bodily things, we could be in certain doing certain things, but it depends on what our vritti is and what our mind is occupied in. And as long as our mind is not in the sattvic behavior or the rajasic, or if it is in the tamasic, God forbid, then we are going to be heading south, heading in the direction that we would be in. I think I'm not explaining this very well, but Ramyaji's question is the aspect of, what if there are no Shudras left in the world? And I think that would be ideal. If God could, force us, then yes, that would be the ideal world to live in. But it's our human nature is going to change ourselves, and it's not always going to be true.
True. So this one is talking about, very true. I mean, you bring in an interesting point. The way I see it is like, it's not like when we talk about mode of ignorance here, right? To form the working class, they also have access to God, right? If they're doing it for the pleasure of God, then obviously they are gunatit at that point, right? They may not have the other proportions as dominant as the mode of ignorance, but they can also have a direct connect to God. So like all four have equal access when it comes to becoming gunatit or transcend their gunas at that point, right? From a lower nature standpoint, if you look at it, see, mode of ignorance may be a misleading thing here, because when you talk about mode of ignorance in spiritual terms, that is, you cannot equate it to some of the lower nature material qualities that we talk about, because Lord Shiva, when he annihilates, it's in the mode of ignorance, but we cannot say mode of ignorance is any less than mode of passion, or right? This is a spiritual thing. Here, mode of ignorance is more around the working class. It's not necessarily around the lower nature or bad virtues or bad qualities that these people have. Nothing to do with that. If you are doing it for the pleasure of God, then you can also have a direct line to God, right? Each category would have, what Lord Krishna is stating is that in any category, any human society that you go in, these four classes would invariably be there. Every country has an army, right? Every country has scholars. Every country has people who are business minded, and every country has workers. So these four categories would always be there, regardless of where you go. Now, communists are the one who are atheists. They don't believe in God at all. Right? Communists, that is one of the things. So let's look at it. Even in communism, if you look at it, you have these divisions there.
My mother-in-law has a very funny saying. घोड़े और गधे हर जगह होते हैं, meaning like they are both four-legged, but the horses and the mules are all over, in every place, and you'll find them in every place. But I completely agree with you. One thing that I don't agree is that Lord Shiva, yes, he is said to be in tamasic nature, but that is not the same tamasic as what we are talking about. It's
Exactly.
in the spiritual sense rather than the material sense that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's essentially what
I'll stop interrupting, Radhe Radhe.
That's essentially what I said, Jyotiji, that when we talk about the tamasic or the mode of ignorance from a spiritual standpoint, it has not to be understood like how we look at it in a material realm, right? That is needed, right? For example, mode of tamasic is needed for us to go to sleep. But if we use it excessively, then it's a problem. And when we talk about these modes in the spiritual realm, they take a different meaning altogether. We cannot, it's not an apples to apple comparison when we are equating it to the material world. So let's finish off this conversation and we'll get to that. Now, if you look at the communities, even in communism, philosophers, there are philosophers even in communism who are the party think tanks. Not everybody is made the party think tank, right? There is usually a group that is called a party think tank. They become, from this definition, even they are having those classifications. Then there are military men who protect the country. If you go to the communist countries, they also have their military, like China being a classic case. Then there are farmers who do the agriculture. You need that as well. Now you will say, what if every farmer becomes a soldier or every soldier becomes a philosopher? How will society work? No, it will not happen. God has seen it long enough. These four categorization will invariably remain in society. Doesn't mean that the class only if classifications are over, then only people will become god realized. No, from each category you can become god realized, right? It has nothing to do with that. And then there are factory workers. People have predisposition to working as well, right? So these categories would always remain. Now let's talk about, what do you think is Lord Krishna's caste? Which category would you put him in? God is saying, I am beyond all this stuff, right? Anyways, but if you were to bracket Lord Krishna, which caste would you put him in? Anybody? Yes.
All four. I mean, Shashiji, please go ahead.
Nitinji, is it Vaishya?
Okay, we'll see. Yeah, you are right. Vaishya also. Very true. Also, I would say, not just.
Himanshuji?
I'm not sure, but just wondering if it's Shudra, like given he was like the charioteer of Arjun, so working class, I mean, that makes sense. I don't know.
He was a Raja also, by the way. He was Dwarkadhish too. Okay, no, let's just some food for thought. Yes, Samji, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think he should be counted in all the four categories. Like Shaktriya, sometime he was fighting with the Kamsa and many others also. I think he born as a Yadav Brahmin. And at one point he was cleaning the surfaces, pattal vagara saaf kar raha tha. So, and he was washing the feet of him. So you can say that he's a kind of Shudra.
Okay.
And he was dealing with the Vapar or something. So I think he should be in all the four categories. Moreover, he's a Gunatit. But from the practical point of view, you can say he has been in all the four categories, I guess.
Let's look at it predominantly, part of it. The predominant is the key. We all do all kind of works for sure, but there is one predominant guna, right? So when the Rajsuya Yagya happened, Yudhishthir did a Rajsuya Yagya. You go to Mahabharata, you'll know that. And they wanted to have the topmost Brahmin in that Yagya that need to be there, the guest of honor for that Yagya. And they invited Lord Krishna for that. Okay, he said that now God is in this shloka is saying that okay, anyways, before I get into that, let me get into that and then I'll come back to this. I think I jumped the gun a little bit. So the Rajsuya Yagya, he was invited over. Now, if we look at it from a technical standpoint, as we measure caste or label it, he was born in a Kshatriya clan, Yadav dynasty. He was born in a Kshatriya clan. So by birth, he was a Kshatriya. However, He was raised in a Vaishya clan, cowherd. That is what Nanda Baba, they used to do Vepar, would send butter and all that. Now he was raised in a Vaishya clan. He was born in a Kshatriya clan. However, through his karam, he was actually accorded the stature of the topmost Gyani Brahmin at that point. Rajsuya Yagya, he was given that privilege. Now he was called upon by Yudhishthir and he said, no, I will not. Okay, the Yudhishthir said that, he said, get some Ved Gyani for that. Okay, Lord Krishna. So then he said, you are the goal of all the Vedas, basically. They knew that. The whole objective of reading scriptures is to understand Krishna. So who can be any better than him, right? Who was there at that point? So he was called upon. So Krishna said, all right, I'll do that. But I have a condition. And his condition was that he's going to welcome all the guests, lay down that red carpet for them, wash their feet, and pick up all their stuff during that yajna. That's what Lord Krishna, that service he performed during the yajna. Right? I told about this concept of Ladki Wale. He did exactly the same there. His job was to get everybody, wash their feet, and just be a good host and lift their, the remnants when they were done with food and stuff like that. That was the job he performed during Rajsuya Yajna. Look at the humility of Lord Krishna. Now, the other aspect of it is God is saying, let's look at this concept. So now Lord Krishna, by Karam, he was Brahmin at that point because it was needed during that Yajna. So what our scriptures in Bhagavad-Gita, the shloka is saying is that God is the creator of the scheme of the world, yet he is the non-doer. And then it is equated to an analogy of a rain. The rainwater, it falls equally on the forest, and we see that the manifestations could vary, right? For example, you could have a banyan tree, flowers, and then you could have the same rain falling and it may yield into a big tree. And then if the rain is falling in a Swati nakshatra into an oyster, it will become a pearl. And the same rain, if it falls on, thorny things, it will become a rod. So is rain discriminating between anything, or it is the vessel, the recipient of the vessel, which actually manifests the same rain? So same is a concept. God is the non-doer in this case. He's saying, I'm the creator of the scheme of the world. Creator in the sense, my energy will fall, and these are the four categories you will invariably fall into based on the interplay of gunas that you are subjected to for as long as you are not God realized. That's essentially what he is saying, if you were to simplify this whole thing. He knows these three gunas will have their interplay. One will become dominant in any life, and when he supplies his energy as a Paramatma, it will manifest as one of these four categories. That's all he's saying in the shloka. And that is determined by your karma, which is in turn is determined by your sanskars, which in turn is determined by the kind of choices we have made in the past or our sanskars we have built. And energy is agnostic to that. So he knows whenever somebody comes in a human form, his interplay of guna are going to dictate the kind of karam he's going to do, and that will essentially fall into these four categories. You can create subcategories and corollaries around it, but he's just given you the complete framework around it. And that is determined by your karma in that particular life, not through the janm that you had. Okay, so we are all caste agnostic, and it is something which is very flexible. We can keep on changing it whenever we want. So that was the concept. Now that brings us to the next part. Is God realization proprietorship of any sect, religion, or caste? That is a question for today. Let's get that going. Any announcements before that, Mutamani ji? Please fill out the feedback tracker and announcements you can make, and then we'll continue on that.
Yes, Nitin ji. Yeah, I just share screen.
Sure. And for that, I wanted to let you know tomorrow we are going to discuss a very important topic. We have not seen God. Okay. And we have not experienced God realization. Then how do we fall in love with God? Something that we have not realized or have no experience of, something we don't see. How do we fall in love with God? We talk about love God, love God. I mean, how do we love God when you can't even see him? So let's discuss that topic tomorrow before we move on to the next shloka. We'll pick up this topic tomorrow. Okay, over to you, Mitawani ji, and then we'll get that discussion.
So the announcements, these are the announcements. Walk for Education and Healthcare and Swamiji's USA tour. So please do go to this link for all the upcoming events. We have International Festival of Yoga, June 15 to 21st. It's online and in person. And the family camp, not to be missed. Please, please, please do register for that. And we have daily lectures in the family camp. We do have all these coming up. So please do go to this link. I will be posting it as well as the feedback tracker. And this is the Seva for Hari Guru. So many of us think that why do we have to keep telling about liking the post and sharing, commenting and all that? But it's just a 5 minutes job, but it can change somebody's life. Like how I came into JK Yoga was just because of a WhatsApp message. So that is the reason. So please do take 5 minutes of your time and try to like the pages, whatever videos that are being shared. It's a great seva actually. So, and yes, about this JK Yoga Reels contest. So we've been seeing many like that. So please do share that. And for all the online classes, from those who are in Dallas, May 14th, we will be starting in-person Bhagavad-Gita recitation. So please do register for that. Yeah, it's a free session. Those are the announcements, Nitinji. I will be posting the feedback tracker right now.
Sure. So again, coming back to Ramya's question, I was just thinking about it. So basically we are saying that what if everybody becomes Gunatit? It will be good problem to have, right? Like in corporates, they say it's a good problem to have. It has not happened so far, but if it happens, it will be a good problem to have. But if it doesn't happen, then what happens? If it doesn't happen, that means you are still under the influence of those three gunas. And if you are under the influence of those three gunas, their interplay would manifest such that one of the gunas would be predominant. And that would dictate one of these four categorizations that you will fall into. That's essentially what it means. Just to simplify this whole conversation, either you are Gunatit or you are either you are Mayatit or you are Mayadhin. If you are Mayatit, you are godalized, good for you. If you are Mayadhin, you will have the interplay of three gunas, you are under that. One guna will be predominant based on your past sanskars and all that stuff. That will determine your categorization as per one of these four categories. That's essentially what it means. But that still gives you a freedom to conquer your lower nature, the gunas that is contributing towards your lower nature, towards the higher nature. God has given you complete freedom for that. And the highest guna is beyond gunas. That is anyway God is asking us to start aligning to through Karam Yoga, right? Or through devotion. Okay, let's hear from a couple of hands I see.
Ramji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. So that ideal case you were talking about, Nitinji, even if it happens, I think because God is infinite, he will still create more Jivatmas to continue this material world. After all, we don't, I mean, why did God create Jivatmas? It's a play for him, right?
No.
So he will still expand.
No, he did not create. He did not create Jivatmas. He did not create Maya. Nobody created anybody. We have always existed. And that was my first question when I entered into spirituality, that why did God create? Did he want to have fun? Was he bored all by himself? Right? No. So we have always existed ever since God has. He's not created us. Jivatmas have always existed for as long as God has existed. And God doesn't need to create anybody to feel fulfilled. He's Atma Krida, Atma Rati, and Atma Ram, three attributes of God. So it's not that he's under some kind of a compulsion or obligation to keep on creating Jivatmas. But if everybody has become God realized, no, he's not under any obligation to do that.
But we are his energies, right? Energies he can expand his energies infinitely.
We are his energies and he's infinite, and that is why there are infinite souls, and every day infinite souls are realizing God as well. So that is a different thing, but he doesn't have to create it. They just exist. That's how it is.
What does it mean by expansion then? Expanding energy?
Expanding energy means his planetary expansions. I know expanding energy, and I've not heard about that concept, that expanding his energy. What is that concept?
I thought he has multifarious energies and he can expand them infinitely. That's what I then I understood it like he can multiply the energies. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, you can do, but then Jivatmas is not something that he's creating on the go like a factory. Okay. Jivatmas have always existed, and they are infinite of those already out there in different Brahmans. So that is a concept that, and then when the Mahapralaya happens, he takes everybody under his Mahodar and then again releases them, and the cycle keeps on repeating. So the point here is that for as long as we are under Maya, these categorization would remain in every society, whichever nationality you are part of. Every country has its army, right? Every country have people who do business. Every country has scholars, and every country have people workers. That's all he's saying. And that classification is not something that we can do away with just like that. They will remain always. And that's essentially what this shloka is reiterating.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Padmaji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
I think I saw Pragyari as well. Yes.
Yeah, I will unmute her. Wait. Go ahead, Padmaji.
Yes, Pragyari. Please go ahead.
Just trying to simmer this down. Such a heavy loaded this thing. I was just trying to simmer this down. And this is what I kind of boiled down to myself. God is capable of everything, but we are not. So we are only capable of what we are capable of from whatever the samskaras that we have that we call as tendencies, right? But then what he has given us is the willpower to go beyond those tendencies. So that is the functionality of it. But the duties or the dharma, which is dharma in my head is a duty, right? The duty that we're able to perform is not the same thing as what we are capable of performing. Able to perform is somewhere we are kind of predefining ourselves based on our samskars. This is all I can do. I don't want to do anything more than this. I cannot go beyond this, which I feel like what Duryodhana is. I don't want to hear anything. I know the best. This is what I can do. Don't change me. Don't tell me anything. This is what it is. And then if I contrast that with Arjuna, he's saying, I know that I'm capable. I feel like I'm capable, but somehow I have this dharma sankat or the confusion in my mind that I know what my duty is, but I know what my tendencies are. The tendencies are I can fight the war, but somewhere in my mind, I have this dharma sankat. Sankat, in my head, dharma sankat means a confusion which does not allow you to the duty that you can perform. So when you have that kind of confusion, and you know your tendencies, you know that you are Kshatriya and you have those tendencies and capabilities to support a function in a society, but you are not following your dharma. That's when the dharma sankat comes. So your tendencies are what it will allow you to, but your capabilities are much beyond than what you allow yourself to. And that's where I feel that the willpower comes into picture, which God has graced us with to say, yes, this is what I feel like, this is what my tendency is from my previous samskaras, but my willpower is saying that I can go beyond my tendencies. I can perform or support a certain position in the society. And that is what we call it as taking courage or conviction to step into a job, to step into a position that we are not comfortable with. Probably somebody doesn't want to ever lecture, ever. And if they don't challenge their willpower, they will not take up that new dharma or the new tendencies that they never had, but willing to take that tendencies. If somebody doesn't want to be a host, somebody doesn't want to present, somebody was fearful, but unless they push themselves and beyond those tendencies, they could have never gone. So the willpower is telling us that if we beyond administer the willpower, you can go beyond your samskaras and do something which will support the society and put it in balance like the 4 pillars of the society. That's how I see it.
Yep. If I were to summarize, yes, you can go beyond your tendencies. Let's not make our tendencies as our excuse to cap our potential. We have a capability of going beyond our tendencies. Willpower is one of the tools. Even higher than willpower is the why power. When you're intellectually convinced, you don't even need willpower at that point. You just do it because it's important for you. So yes, we can transcend that. And Lord Krishna starts this whole thing by calling him Kshatriya, right? That's the base he sets. Finally, he takes him to the science of work as well. Okay, you are a Kshatriya, now perform your duty, but let me tell you how to perform that duty. Not like one of the questions that I think Shefali you asked, Sandhya was asking was, he's asking him to kill people, right? Kshatriya. Now, how is it different from, let's say, somebody calling like fatwa is issued, right? Terrorists also do that, and they also have the same thing that I'm killing it for God. How is it different? So there are some technical differences here, right? First of all, he's saying you are a Kshatriya, so go for it, not out of a sentiment of hatred or vengeance. First technical difference between what terrorists do. It's hatred and vengeance. That's not the sentiment in which you operate. In fact, it becomes a binding karma. It takes you to hellish abodes, Lord Krishna says. You do it as a matter of your duty. First, the knowledge, the thing that key thing that he's telling is that. The second thing is that when you're doing your duty, obviously he introduces a science of work, do it for the pleasure of God. He's not promising him material rewards. He's giving him spiritual rewards that it will be liberating. Here, the material rewards are giving back. You will get so many hoods. Your family will get so much of money. You will go and enjoy celestial abodes. That is what is being promised. Second problem. Third problem, a person is saying that, right? He's not shown his cosmic form to prove that he's God. Here, God is telling it. There are a lot of differences between the way that message is coming across and why it is has to be done. It's not that you do it as a matter of duty being a Kshatriya, but in the proper consciousness. So it goes much deeper. There are so many layers and nuances to this act which are explained here. And that too after making all attempts to make a truce with those people, right? So there are differences around that as well. But yes, the Lord Krishna starts with the big boot camp. Do your duty as a Kshatriya. And then he goes on to the higher principle, art of performing work, science of doing work. Then he goes even further, Buddhi Yoga, how to use your intellect, and continues going for Bhakti Yoga. And finally he says, all the dharmas that you have spoken about. Now let me give you in just nutshell executive statement. He says, Sarv dharmam parityajya mamekam sharanam braj. That is the executive statement of Bhagavad-Gita. But he's not introduced it in the first chapter, second chapter. He's introduced in the 18th chapter after taking Arjun through whole 9 yards of the possibilities for humans. Because not everybody is ready for surrender. Right? First you perfect what you are doing. First you understand what your dharma is. Just start aligning to that. That is the bare minimum hygiene criteria as a human. Then you start understanding the higher principle, deeper principles around it. And there is no higher dharma than paradharma, aligning to the will of God. And that means surrendering to him. And surrender is a natural consequence of love. When you love somebody, you're already surrendered to them. And why should we love somebody whom we have not seen? We have not experienced. So that is something we'll tackle tomorrow. So let's hear. Rahul, you wanted to add something as well?
Go ahead, Rahulji. Radhe Radhe.
I think Swamiji and Maharaji has mentioned that mind is the cause of bondage and liberation in this world. So irrespective of whether we are Brahmin, Kshatriya, Shudra, it doesn't matter. You have to focus on your Kriyaman Karma and then start changing your consciousness slowly. That is the end goal. I mean, we can debate on all these questions and then our mind can have many questions, but at the end of the day, that is the main goal. So we should be focusing on that rather than trying to indulge in all these different questions and then trying to find answers.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, very true. Yes, Panchadashi states that Maneva Manushyanam Karanam Bandha Moksha. Mind is the only thing which is making us repeat, right? The day we fix our mind, the job is done. Everything is done the day our mind is fixed. And this spirituality is applying that detergent and trying to clean it. But yeah, I mean, intellectually we need to be convinced. The reason we are trying to solidify this is because we want to empower our why power, why it is important. Once we are intellectually convinced, we don't even need willpower at that time. Willpower is used to exert up to a certain level to form good habits, to form good repetitive patterns that we can employ in our life. Beyond that, we need why power. Once you're convinced this is important, that's it. That's all you need, right? The why power is much more powerful. It's just like that rasgulla you are trying to eat and somebody says there is poison, you will throw it away. Why? Because you are convinced that it is not good for me. So why power is very, very, very important. And spirituality is about arming that why power so that we can continue on this path with focus and very absolute clarity that we need. Yes.
Asha ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Last two hands, Asha ji and then Padma ji, I think. Good. Yes, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
Just you said that Krishna is from which caste we can put his life. तो मैं ये कहूंगी कि उन्होंने जो वर्णाश्रम किया, संस्कार और टेंडेंसी और नेचुरल जो आपका रुचि होती है उसके अनुसार और ड्यूटी के अनुसार, सोसाइटी के लिए ऑल द फोर आर नेसेसरी, बट उस वक्त खुद अपने जीवन से उन्होंने ये सब दिखाया कि चारों का सम्मिश्रण इंसान कर सकता है और भेदभाव के बिना। बाद में क्या हुआ, वर्णाश्रम में इतनी सारी विकृतियां हम लोगों ने, इंसानों ने और सब ने कर दी थी, वो इतना एक विकृति और दूषण बन गया सोसाइटी के लिए। मगर उनके अपने जीवन को हम देखें तो वो ज्ञान में जो ब्राह्मण थे, सांदीपनी ऋषि के साथ बचपन से वो इतना ज्ञान लिया, और बाद में क्षत्रिय तो वो थे, कंस और शौर्य के वो प्रतीक थे, सब अधर्म के प्रतीकों को नाश करने के लिए, और फियरलेस ही वाज। एंड वैश्य के गुण क्या होते हैं कि अधर्म के बिना सोसाइटी के लिए क्या फायदा है, अपने लिए क्या है, वो सोचकर टैक्टफुली, चाणक्य नीति से वो करता है वैश्य। टैक्टफुली एंड स्किलफुली ही हैंडल्स सिचुएशंस, आई थिंक। चातुर्य जो कहते हैं वो उन्होंने किया। जब भी जरूरत पड़ी तो दुर्योधन की जांग पर वो भीम को बताया, फिर अश्वत्थामा के वो युधिष्ठिर को, जो वो उनकी जो स्किल थी वो वैश्य की थी। और शूद्र को नफरत न करें लोग, इसलिए उन्होंने पत्तल वगैरह उठाए, सेवा की सबकी, ग्वालों की साथ गायों का वो काम किया, गायों को। तो ये सब उन्होंने अपने जीवन में चारों को इतना विशाल रूप से करके दिखाया। मगर लोगों ने क्या किया कि उसकी जो मूल हार पकड़ने के बदले वो ये क्या सब विकृतियां डाल दी। तो अगर हम सोचे तो ये सब बैलेंस करके कर सकते हैं। और नफरत, किसी को सुपीरियरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स में होने की जरूरत नहीं, ब्राह्मणों को या वैश्यों को, शूद्र को नीची नजर से देखने की जरूरत नहीं। जैसे एक पार्टिसिपेंट ने कहा कि शूद्र अगर ना हो तो बहुत ही अच्छा हो, मगर ये दृष्टि बदलने की जरूरत है। शूद्र हो, वर्किंग, एवरीबडी इज नेसेसरी फॉर दिस सोसाइटी, बट जो दृष्टि है वो भेदभाव की अगर मिट जाए तो वो कृष्ण ने अपने जीवन से, ये जैसे गांधी जी ने कहा था, मेरा जीवन ही मेरा संदेश, ये सही कृष्ण। थैंक यू।
आशा जी, आपके विचार बहुत ही उत्तम और उपयुक्त समीक्षण था इस पूरे वार्तालाप का, और हमें बहुत प्रभावित किया, सो धन्यवाद। Very nice. I think you really balanced it out and really summed it up, the discussion around it, and he himself exemplified that all four have to be looked at in perspective as opposed to discriminating between any of these. Wonderful points. Okay, last real quick, we can take that and then we will bring our today's discussion to close. Hope it shed some light on this topic, at least better than previously how we used to perceive the castes and all the divisions that we have in society. I know we can continue further on this discussion, but at least it's hopefully bring in a little more light into how our scriptures are explaining us and some of the stereotypes related to this whole topic. Yes, Padma ji.
Couple of questions. I'll just read it out quickly.
Sure.
Is it this nature or world require a balance between these four pillars? If so, what happens if imbalance starts, is one question. And another person has asked, if God has not created souls, then why is God called as creator?
God is not created. God is called creator because, see, when you have a painting, there is a painter. When there is a writing, there is a writer. And when you see a beautiful scenery where you take a selfie, who has created that beautiful scenery? That is the creator. Okay, so not because he has created us, he has just unleashed us. He's just given us an opportunity to perfect ourselves so that we can also become like him. He's not created us. Brahma, Jeev, and Maya, all three are eternal entities. Nobody has created anybody, and nobody can destroy anybody. That is how it is. The very first lesson, physics in in science that we had, energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. Similarly, all the three energies are eternal energies. They can neither be created nor be destroyed. So that is how it is. And then imbalance, don't worry about the imbalance. If it happens, then God can very well transfer souls from another Brahman to this one, because there are enough souls who will keep falling into one of these four categories for as long as they are not God realized. If everybody becomes God realized, then we'll start worrying what happens to this world if everybody becomes God realized. I think it will be a good problem to have. It has not happened so far. If it happens, I think it will be a good problem. God will be very nice. Will be very happy around it. Will he get bored? I don't know. But it hasn't happened so far. So we can speculate around that possibility, maybe sometime in future. Or when we become God realized, we can contemplate upon it. Okay, what will happen or what it would take to make this happen.
So yes, Padmaji and Jyotiji, you can be real quick. Go ahead, Padmaji.
Just a quick thing. I think it was Sandhya ji who asked this question, right? Why did Arjuna kill? At least from like few things that I remember, it was given. What needs to be done was given by Sri Krishna, and also in the state of mind, the intent that was done was to protect dharma. And I think even Mahabharata is the ground where that happened. I think it's called Dharma. Dharma Yuddha, right? So to protect the dharma, there are certain things that has to be done, which is given by God's guidance and has done. So that was one thing. And the other thing is, if we deeply think about our own tendencies and the tendencies overall that we are talking about, equal proportions, just like rainbow. Let's like a great recipe of anything, whether it's rainbow, whether it's any human condition also that we talk about, like autism, for example. It's a spectrum, and it's a perfection is when it's a spectrum, but not just one unique thing. So equal proportions of everything at the right time, at the right cause, at the right state of mind. That is the purest recipe of love for God, which is coming in even you have those tendencies, but in the right time and the right state of mind and the right intention and equally balanced proportions is the beautiful recipe for love for God eventually. That's how I see it.
Can you please publish this recipe, I think, in our portal? And all of you, please start following this recipe. That's a great point, actually. And hitting that sweet spot is the challenge. How do we know that when we have hit the sweet spot? But beautiful, very nicely articulated, Padmaji. Thank you. You can take Jyotiji real quick, and then we'll bring our today's discussion to close. You can start rehearsing the shloka, closing shloka already.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
I just wanted to respond to the previous person that said that that getting rid of one leg is going to be cruel, and she laid out the points very beautifully. But I wanted to say that I was not saying that let's get rid of the Shudras, but I was talking about let's get rid of the tamasic tendencies within us, which is prevalent, as Bhagwanji said, in certain behaviors. And as long as that we strive to be at the very least Rajasic or all Sattvic, or if God can support us, if we get beyond all these tendencies, that is where we need to strive to be, instead of saying that I'm content to be in the tamasic because I'm an equally contributing member in the society.
Yes.
And I think Padmaji was trying to look for the word Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. Okay. That's the first verse of Bhagavad-Gita. Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you. Jyotiji, thanks for clarifying. Yes, I think I understood it the same way. It's more about getting away from ignorance, because it is our inheritance or our entitlement to become enlightened in life, right? Maybe one of these days I'll bring in the Maslow hierarchy of needs. It all starts with food, clothing, and shelter. But for as long as we are struggling with that, because of whatever reason, spirituality is the last thing that will come to your mind, unless you are born saint like Ravidas or a lot of saints which were born in families which were not very well off, and still they could progress in that part. But for a normal human being, if you are struggling with food, clothing, and shelter, then obviously there's a good likelihood that most of your life will be led in ignorance only, because you will not have time to even seek higher things in life. Spirituality is something you start seeking once you have taken care of your basic things, right? At least for most of the people. And maybe we can have an interesting discussion on that topic as well. Great discussion. Let's do our closing prayers, and tomorrow we'll discuss this topic. We'll not do a shloka, but we'll talk about this concept of how do we fall in love with God when we have not even seen him. And we'll have a bit of a discussion around that topic as well.
Oh,
So
those who wish to recite, you can just unmute yourself.
सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामया सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Thank you, Nitinji.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and Radhe Radhe, stay blessed. Good evening and have a good rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, everyone. Radhe Radhe.